Good morning, good morning, good morning. Today is June the 5th, Tuesday, June the 5th. Here we are again, once again, with our show, The Spirit World Sees All, and you know it does, and it really does. And we've got quite a few things to talk about today, but before we begin, first of all, I would like to say, of course, as always, I have Greg Eagle standing next to me, um, and um, and what, and we have Chris as our great facilitator, and then there's all of you. But I do have to ask Chris: is there anybody there?
There are people still logging on though.
Okay, so
Gary's on, Barbara's on. At least they're in the chat room. Let's say.
all right, okay. Well, as we know, we love to interact with people. So I like to go to the chat room as much as possible. But um, it, let's see. What am I going to talk about before everybody starts coming on here? Well, it's been a very busy week for me this week because and I'll talk about this more, I think, once we get into the show a little bit more. But um, I actually put something about this, a brief something about this on Instagram this week, because Tuesday, I have to admit that Tuesday was a bit of a rough day for me. And I was exhausted at the end of it. And unfortunately, yesterday, that exhaustion sort of went into yesterday a little bit. And I suppose that I should then be thinking of accepting I'm getting older. I can't do it as much or as easily as I used to do it. But actually, um, it isn't anything to do with me getting older. I don't think so anyway. It isn't anything to do with me getting older. It's just that, and I've always felt this throughout the throughout working in this realm, in this work that I do with Grey Eagle. I've always had to struggle sometimes with not just the pain of the clients who come to me for consultations, but then this is going to sound surprising perhaps to a lot of people. When we lose someone, they pass into the spirit world, and I think there's a tendency for us to, we're grieving and we're in pain and we're struggling with stuff that happened sometimes way back in our childhood, or we're struggling with having to deal with the loss of someone. And I think in our humanness, in our humanness, I think it's so easy for us to get caught up in what's happening with us, that we actually either forget or we don't realize that our loved ones in the spirit world are going through very similar things. I know that some people think that when we die, then all of our problems and all of our worries and all of our stuff go away. And I think that's a whole subject that we should talk about at some point. And maybe we'll have talk about that subject when we do this subscription program. And maybe that can be one of the things that we discuss, and we can talk more about it. But I think that sometimes for me, as a spiritual medium, and I do things as a spiritual medium. I do things probably very differently than a lot of mediums do. I don't know how other people work, but when I am talking to people in the spirit world, it's not sort of something that is out there somewhere. Um, it's that they're in my space, they're in my living room, they're standing there looking at me. It's like, if you have somebody over for tea, you say, come on over for tea, and they come over for tea, and sometimes it's a fun visit, and they can tell you all sorts of fun things about themselves and what they've been doing and so on. But sometimes, come on over for tea means come on over for tea and tell me what's going on, and maybe what's going on is difficult. Maybe they're having an emotionally difficult time with certain things, and so so when the spirit world comes into my life, and especially when I'm doing consultations or if we're doing an event, and I'm giving messages from the spirit world, it might seem to a lot of people that everything is perfectly fine. They're now, they've passed into the spirit world. Everything is wonderful and lovely. It's a little bit like imagining them they're sitting on a cloud. That we don't necessarily understand or connect to the often to the difficulties that they have, and the emotional difficulties that they're going through, as they're watching us. As I say, it's a huge subject, but when I get days, or when I have communication, or when I give consultations, sometimes the pain and the distress of the person who I'm giving the consultation to is, and because I'm very open and I'm listening, and I'm also connecting and often relating to their pain, because maybe I've gone through something similar. But then also on top of that, I'm then having to help those in the spirit world, because that's first and foremost what I'm there for, and to listen to them, and to try to understand and to help them with the pain that they are going through. So there's a little myth, I think, that once we pass, once we die, once we go to heaven or whatever it is, everything's good. And I wish that I could tell you that that's okay. And I don't want to worry anybody here, because, we don't want to think of our loved ones, because we love them, we care for them. We don't want them we don't want to think of them in distress or what have you. But when we pass into the spirit world, not only do we do see, as the title of this show, The Spirit World Sees All, we do see what is going on with our loved ones here on earth, and we see the struggles that our loved ones go through, and a father to a daughter, watching the daughter have to struggle with all sorts of things. Sometimes those in the spirit world will know that the struggles that they're seeing with, especially with their children, let's say, or with their wife, a lot of those struggles, a lot of the pain, in some way they were responsible for, because of their actions. Actions have reactions, and they'll often feel responsible for, like, give you an example of my father. Whenever I see my father, it's always a joy, and he's always smiling. And here he is again. I'm looking at him, and he's smiling away at me, and he loves to be here, and we love to communicate. But then there are times when we have these really deep conversations, because certainly when I was a child, he did not protect me as you would imagine a father should protect their child. He did not protect me, and in fact he was mostly completely unaware of what was going on with the family, because he was a soldier, and he was off and out there, and not even aware of what was going on at home. And that happens to a lot of people. But there are certain things that he personally did and said, and there are certain actions that he took, which he has, looking back, and of course very clearly, he can see, the spirit world sees all, he can see the pain, the hurt, or his actions, he can see how his actions might have directly impacted me and had a profound effect on me. So it's it's not all roses in the spirit world. It's not everybody sitting on a cloud. It's when we are there, we have to deal with ourselves, just as we try, hopefully, to deal with ourselves when we're still here on this earth plane. And that brings me to another point. Then I'm going to stop talking, and then we're going to go to the chat room, because I'm assuming everybody's who's coming on is on by now. We hope anyway. But so often we, you know, the people who take their own lives, they often take a person will often take his or her own life because it's too hard here. They feel life is too hard. They can't deal with the emotions, or they can't deal with what's going on with them, or they can't deal with, you know, the fact that their wife left them, or the fact that their, you know, son doesn't speak to them anymore, or whatever's going on. They find life too hard, and so they feel very often, not with all suicides, of course, but a lot of people who take their own life, they feel that by taking their own life, they're escaping their problems, they're escaping their emotional issues. And unfortunately, that's not the case at all, because wherever we are, whether we're on this earth plane or whether we're in the spirit world, we still have to deal with who we are and our own emotions. We have to deal with the fact that our actions have affected somebody else, and we hope that our actions affect people in a good way. But of course, our actions can be the opposite, and our actions can affect people in a bad way. And I think it's harder to do that in the spirit world, because we can really we see our loved ones, we see our friends, we see how our lives impacted them. We see what our actions, verbal actions or physical actions, we see what those actions did to our loved ones. And that's not always easy. It's not always easy to handle. It's not always easy to see. Yeah, I think this is a greater topic. I don't know why I got onto that topic, and my daddy's still here, so that's good. But anyway, it's a huge topic, and I think that we do have to understand that, you know, the spirit world is not all rainbows and sunshine and flowers and so on, because we take with us who we are. We take our emotions with us, we take our thoughts with us, we take everything with us. We take who we are but then we see the consequences of who we have been while we've been on this earth plane. Okay, I'm done. Chris. Well, I could go on with this subject. That's the thing. I could go on with this subject.
Oh, it's so fascinating.
It is a huge subject. And I don't want anyone listening to, when I'm talking about this, I don't want anyone thinking, oh my God, does this mean that my mother's miserable in the spirit world? Does this mean that my dad's having a hard time, and so on? As I've said, my father is here, and he's joyful to be here, and it's wonderful that we have this great connection now. But there have been many times when I've seen him distressed. He's apologized to me numerous times, because his actions sometimes affected me really adversely. You know, on and on. I'm thinking, see, I told you, shut up. I just want to say this one thing, because a lady came to me to see me. She came to my house for a consultation, and her husband, they'd been married for 35 years or something, and she loved him, and he was sick, and she took care of him, and so on and so forth. But when he died, she found he'd left pretty much everything to his daughter, a daughter from a previous marriage, that he had said that he wanted his daughter to arrange his funeral, and basically he left his poor wife, who thought they were happily married, he left her totally out in the cold. And then of course, there he was looking at me, having to admit and to face the issue of why he did that and how ashamed he was that he did those things, because being able to see her, he could see that that his actions had hurt her very badly, and she'd done nothing to deserve it. She'd always thought that they had a good relationship, she'd been a good wife, and so on and so forth. Anyway, enough. How are we doing in the chat room? That's me. Comments, questions, let's go.
Yeah, we have so many people saying hello to you. Eric said, "Good morning, Rosemary, sending you healing. Thank you for the Monday meditation."
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it. Very brief, wasn't it? But still a good way to start the week.
Annika says, "My consultation was so joyful and insightful. I'm glad we had a few laughs too."
Oh, a lot.
She said, "I must have slept really deep." And in parentheses, she wrote, "Rosemary will get my meaning."
Oh, I know that. I know what that means. I'd like her to know if she slept really. I'd like her to know if she enjoyed that sleep. That's what I want to know. and just there you are, and you are lovely. And I had such a good time with you through our consult. Really good time. Yeah.
All right. Vale says, "I imagine that Rosemary has the ability to see or talk to many spirits. Is there one that she remembers in particular? And among the spirits, has she ever met any famous people?"
Right. Oh golly, where do I begin? I have met many famous people, and I met many famous people who are still on this earth, who have called me to see if I can connect with other famous people. But so yes, so this is a yes to that. Can I remember one? There are so many. It's sort of there are so many really profound, some really funny instances, some very perplexing, a little confusing. So, I mean, as much as I would, as much as I would like to recall that, I knows exactly what I'm talking about, because I did tell her a story which we're not going to tell today because we're not, because it's too long. But when I'm talking to people, sometimes a story comes to mind. For instance, just as we did there now, the story of this husband who was now having to not only deal with the fact that the remorse that he now felt because of how his wife was so badly affected by his actions, because what he did was dreadful. What he did was awful to her. It was awful. He took all her power away as a wife and gave it to the daughter from the first marriage, who then abused that power, and she wasn't even allowed, this wife of 35 years, they had a great life. I mean, they were not poor people. They had a fabulous life. They traveled a lot. She always said they laughed a lot together. But this poor woman, who I still remember so clearly, the heartbreak, and how fast it took her to forgive him, because he was asking for her forgiveness, and she forgave him instantly. I'm not sure I would have been quite so willing, but anyway, she was not even allowed to sit on the front row at her husband, 35 years, at her husband's funeral. She was not even allowed to sit on the second row. She was relegated to the third row. And of course, lots of people who were at the funeral couldn't understand why the widow was not sitting front and center, because the daughter chose to literally cut her out of her, you know, her anything that she might have been entitled to. Just not entitled to, I don't mean financially or anything. I'm talking about just decency, just having the decency to say to the wife of your father, even if she's not your mother, but a wife who you've known for 35 years, who you've watched your husband be happy with, which there was the situation, but to not have the decency or the kindness to say, you can sit with me on the front row. I mean, come on, you know, the awful things. But anyway, and people in the spirit world, you know, let me tell you that guy did not go to heaven. I'm using that term. Did not go to heaven and have a happy time. And when he was here, I was actually stunned from the things that he'd done. I was so stunned that he actually had the nerve to even join in with the consultation. But that was what she came for. She wanted her husband, and she just needed some answers as to why he had done this and left the bulk of his property, which she had been part of, by the way, taking care of him, looking after him, being a wife for 35 years. Anyway, we can go on and on. But let me tell you, heaven is not a bed of roses for that guy, because he's living with remorse, he's living with his actions, and I'm sure that whenever he visits with his wife, I'm sure that he sees the results of his actions, and he could barely look at me, because I'm very, you know, a bit tough. You should be ashamed of yourself. He said to me, I'm ashamed, and I said, so you should be, because what he did was despicable. And keep going.
Dean is asking, does Gray Eagle ever have questions he wonders about that he has to ask help with from other advanced people in the spirit world?
Well, I like that question, Dean. That's a good question. Well, yes. I mean, Grey Eagle isn't an isolated entity, and there are many, many, many. Let's see. We could call them the elders. We could call them the wise ones. And I'm thinking of the Native American culture, where the elders were the wise men who we went to if we needed answers to things. And I know that Grey Eagle has other people. It's not just one person, you know, deciding this or answering that. It's a team effort. It's a group effort. So yes, I think I've answered that question. So yes, he does have questions that he needs to, you know, find answers to if he doesn't know, and he's smiling, and I have to tell you from him, Dean, that as much as we might think that he is all knowing and all seeing, he's shaking his head and saying that none of us is an island. We are all connected with each other. So, Chris, next, keep going.
Violet says, I've been reading local tales of thousands of sightings of people seeing blue lights like balls of blue fire that sit high in the trees at night. They seem sentient. Do you have any idea what they are?
Well, I've seen these things myself, and I remember once I was actually in Arizona, and I mean I've seen these things more than once, but this particular time I was in Arizona, and I was in the desert, and I was in this amazing house. It looks, I guess from the air, it would look like a giant golf ball. It was a house built especially for, you know, if we were ever invaded or if the world came to an end, or I don't know the exact reasons for this house, but it was amazing. It was big, and it was all of, when you walked inside, all of the walls were round. You know, they had to build the kitchen sort of going around the wall on the back wall where you'd have the cabinets. There were no straight angles to this place. It was amazing. It was an amazing place, And I was there with a friend, and I can remember sitting out, at night time, and the desert. For those of you who've never been into, I've been in a few deserts, but the desert outside of Arizona, where there is nothing, but you can see mountains and so on and so forth. But there's really it's a vast. It looks like it's a vast emptiness, and there are tales of about Arizona. There are tales of laboratories that are built underground that monitor UFOs and stuff like that. I don't know about that, but all I do know is that I would easily say, I mean, just remember, I'm not talking aliens, I'm not talking little green men from space, but I think there's so much more that goes on, and I think the government is very fully aware, or part of the government, or some of the government and the military are aware that there are things that are happening on this earth that we cannot identify. They're unidentified objects, so to speak, and I definitely, with my friend, witnessed that, and also lights and so on, that you're talking about. So it's so easy to say, well, I don't believe in UFOs because in the comic books years ago, the Martians always looked weird, and then we talk about little green men and so on. And there's that great movie, I can't think what it's called now, but I love that movie with that funny little creature. Anyway, but so we're sort of we're led to believe that this is something that we might expect, but right, Gregel is coming in here. This might blow you away. Okay, so there are also, is that what we're calling them? I've never heard this. I've actually experienced it, but I've never heard Gregel talk about that. So here we are with a very new piece of information. Certainly for me. So, and if it's new for me, it must be new for you. So he's talking about the beings of light, and he's describing to me, he's calling them sentinels, and there are sentinels. So, and he's describing these tall beings of light, sort of in human form, but sort of like glowing and filled with light, who, if you know where to look, you can see them, and the desert is one of those places. Interesting. I've got to investigate that more. Sorry, I'm going to leave you hanging there because I've got to talk to Gregor more about this, and I've never heard of sentinels, but they are from, let's say, he says, a far place. And this is where we start to talk about the universe and the many universes that are out there. And I think it's very, we're so human beings, we can be so arrogant, can't we? Because we think we're the super race, and we're I mean, look at us, with the creation of the human body is amazing, and all the bits and pieces that go into making this all work and everything. So we tend to be a little bit arrogant and think that whatever else is out there, isn't as like hence the little green man and the weird looking things. We tend to think that we are we the super race, or not quite. I don't mean that quite, but we are, we are so complex in our makeup. But I think there are other beings. I think it's so stupid, so arrogant of us to think that within the universe we are the only living beings, in whatever form they come, in whatever form they exist. I think it's a bit arrogant of us to think that we're the only living beings in the entire universe. And every time they build a new telescope and we can see a bit further, and then we see a bit further, and then we see a bit further, we think, okay, this is it now. There's nothing else out there. But then somebody builds a telescope, or they find a piece of scientific evidence that other universes do exist. Interesting. Anyway, so I'm stopping. I'm finding myself blah, 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 blah this morning. So you need to stop me. Go.
All right. Barbara is on. Hi, Rosemary. My husband Don died 5 years ago on this date, and my mom's birthday is June 9th. I'd love to hear from either or both of them. Please send me a message if they are near. Thank you for all you do for all of us.
Well, you do know, of course, that it's inevitable. Just so other people know, Barbara has been for a consultation with me, and her husband is kind of front and center in all of this stuff, and will not be left out. And he's blowing you kisses, tapping me on the shoulder and blowing you kisses, even as you were talking. So I'm not at all surprised that he's here, and thank you for asking, because when we ask or we have a consultation, what we're doing is we're allowing our loved ones in the spirit world to come to us and come and talk to us. And just so you know, Barbara, he's happy. It's just because we just had this long conversation about, things left undone, things left unsaid, so on. But he's good and he's happy. I can have a very brief glimpse of a lady standing just to the side of him, but I could easily say it's your mother. I can't. We don't have time for me to delve into it more, but it apparently could. See, I'm not in charge here. Don says yes, so I think. Oh, and celebrate the birthday. Don't know what that means, but I'm told to tell you, Barbara, you've got to celebrate the birthday. All right, keep going, Chris.
Karen says, hi, Rosemary. You are such a special gift to all of us. God bless.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to mention, talking about birthdays, it occurred to me this morning, my first and most wonderful boyfriend, John Stuart Reid. Oh, he was the epitome of tall, dark, and handsome. He really, he was. He had wonderful sort of olive skin and dark eyes and black hair, and he was tall and sort of fairly. He was, yeah. See, the romance. You think all those years ago, I was 17 or something like that. Yeah, I was 17, and I worshipped him from afar. And eventually, as 17-year-old, I had a huge crush on him. And then we got together, and then we got engaged. And then, anyway, and I have had occasion to speak to him many years after that. And I know he has a wonderful wife, and I know that he has two absolutely phenomenal boys, because I spoke to one of them at length, which was wonderful. But anyway, why am I talking about this romance? Because he, it was my fault that he got away, and there have been times when I have wondered. I wonder what I would have. Wonder what would have happened, so on and so forth. Anyway, but his birthday today, so happy birthday to my lovely John. There you are, Chris. Oh wait, stop. In the name of love, we have Mike. Didn't expect Mike. Chris, this is for you. Blowing the kisses. And right, this is a little bit personal, but I'm going to do it anyway because he's asking me to do it. So apparently you've been worried about something recently, and he's telling me to tell you, just don't push, take your time, it'll all work out, but don't push. And he knows your heart is hurting, and he just wants you to know this is right here with you. So that's for you. That from Mike, who's actually tapping me on the shoulder because I know Chris's husband very well. Anyway, keep if you can keep going, Chris, keep going.
Let me wipe the tears away first so I can read in the chat room. Thank you, Rosemary.
Let me tell you, this is not the first or the second or the third time or even the fourth time that I've spoken with Mike since he passed. So we know how to do this very well. But for some reason, Chris, today is a very special day, and he just wants you to know. Remember, he says, "I see all."
God help us. Yes, today's the anniversary of his passing. Yeah.
Well, I often tell this story. When I first realized, and I'm going back, oh gosh, so many years. I'm so old these days, but anyway, just going back so many years, to the first time I actually realized, so really, really realized and accepted the fact that the spirit world actually does see all. Not that they're nosy necessarily, although some are, let me tell you, but that was the moment when I started using bubble bath in my bath water. And that is a true story, because the idea of lying in a bath totally naked with anybody around looking at me was just, I thought, no. Not that I thought that they were perverts or come and take a look or whatever, but it just made me feel more comfortable to do that. But that is a true story, and that's what I used to do. Okay, Chris.
Tammy says, "Good morning, Rosemary and Gray Eagle. Grateful to be here. I just wanted to ask Gray Eagle if he has any thoughts on whether moving to West Bank would be a positive and beneficial move for us. Thank you for these magnificent, thoughtful Thursdays."
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And I hate to do these brief little things because usually the answer to these questions is much more in depth. But I think from what Gregor tells me, I think this is not something that has just come up. I think, or moving is not, the idea of moving has not just come up. It's been there in the background, comes and goes and so on. So I can tell you that it will not be easy. I can tell you that some of the family might sort of struggle a little bit with this. But I think overall it will be beneficial. But having said that, don't just because I said it, do it. You need, it's your responsibility, your choice. But I think it would be, in many ways, would be very beneficial. But of course, then there's the other side of things. If we were having a consultation, I would say, okay, so this, I would say to Grey Eagle, so what if she moves here, but what if she stays where she is? So there are always two sides to these issues. So I'm not saying to you that it will be better to stay where you are, and I'm not saying that it wouldn't be beneficial for you to move. I'm actually saying there are many benefits to moving. I don't even know where the West Bank is, so I'm a bit uncertain as to which country we're in actually, but that doesn't matter because Grey Eagle knows these things. So when he says there would be lots of benefits to that, but it won't be easy, but eventually it will work out, there'll be lots of benefits. You do need more information than that to make a decision. Chris.
Tracy's saying hello from Paris. Laura Jane says it's lovely to hear how things work.
Yes.
Violet's saying, "Oh, I'm loving the Instagram videos, by the way."
Oh, darling, thank you. I need your help. We have to get together and talk, Violet. I'm not quite sure when we can do that, but I need your help. Anyway, because I've got lots of questions. But yes, I'm glad for that. We're not just doing things on Instagram. We're doing things on Instagram, which goes to Facebook. And then, of course, we're doing a lot of stuff, at least 2 or 3 times a week. We do a Monday meditation on YouTube. I think we did that on Instagram. It's only lasted 3 minutes, but I think even if you only take a minute a day to sort of center yourself and to breathe and calm and give to yourself before you start giving to others, I think that's an important thing. So our Monday meditations are going to sort of be focusing on, short, we're not talking about meditations that last for an hour or two. By the way, there's no need for anyone ever to meditate for an hour or two, unless you are a spiritual teacher or you are trying to attain a higher level of spirituality, then that's a whole different thing. But thank you, Violet, for that. I appreciate it. Okay. Samantha tells me, by the way, also, I'll mention this, my daughter is helping me with this Instagram stuff because I'm not at all technical. But she said to me the other day, Mom, she said, you have to smile. She said, sometimes you're so serious. And she said, sometimes, you've got, she said, you've got to leave a minute or two at the front of the video and a minute or two behind the video so that she can find a place where I'm smiling when I begin. So if you've seen me and I'm looking glum and miserable or sour-faced or what have you, that is only because I'm thinking about what it is I'm going to be doing, what it is I'm going to be saying. Anyway, just saying that to all of you. Keep going, Chris.
Violet's asking, when we cross over, do we still have an aura? And can everyone in the spirit world see each other's aura, presuming we still have one?
Oh, well now, okay. We're now getting into a whole other area. Yes, because our aura it's our energy. It's that the aura or the energy field that surrounds us is a part of us. It glows from our soul. It's the aura reflects the light of the soul and how well the soul is doing and so on. But I'm going to give you a little tip here, everybody. So just because a lot of people don't know this. Okay. Now, here we are on Earth and we go into the supermarket or we're walking along the street or in a park, whatever it is we're doing, and we pass people by all the time. And we might smile or say, I'm always saying hello to strangers. I'm smiling, saying, hi, how are you? And sometimes I've got someone I don't know and say, I do love that jacket, if I happen to love that jacket. But anyway, here's the thing. Because we are only looking at the physical, or many of us are only looking at the physical, right? We don't necessarily see the energy. So we can meet someone who seems to be nice, but maybe they're not so nice. And if we could see their aura, we could see their energy field, we would absolutely know this is not a good person or this is a beautiful person, whichever. Okay, so we, in our human form, can hide ourselves. For instance, if we're going on stage, we can hide our nervousness. So we can hide ourselves. So people don't actually really see the heart of us. We don't really see the heart of each other. When we pass to the spirit world, we take with us our etheric body, our spirit body, which is roughly the same shape and size as our physical body. I really need to lose weight. Anyway, so we take with us our spirit body, and I keep referring to this morning. I don't know how many times I've said it. The spirit world sees all. And when we are there in our full open spiritual form with no physical flesh and bones to hide, we immediately will see a person's aura. We'll see. There's no hiding. Can't hide anything. So that's a scary thought, right? But we see each other as we really are. Ooh, this is scary, right? Not so scary, really, if you're a nice person, but still, Anyway, Chris, keep going. I hope that answers your question, Violet.
Tammy says hello to your dad. And
Oh,
then she said, I was truly blessed and gifted an earth angel as a father, and I thank God every day for having him.
oh, how, you know, and I'm sure he hears you saying this, and I bet you've told lots of people about it, Tammy, and wow, how lucky, lucky are you? Because, you know, well, I guess no matter what, we all of us, we're here to learn and grow and so on. And the best teacher, as we know, tears, pain, heartache, are really good teachers. They teach us who we are. They teach us how strong we are. They teach us how strong we can be. But how fantastic that you have had that example of how to be. I actually said to someone a couple of days ago, and I've written about this, and I've said this, and I've even stood up in a courtroom and said this. You know, my parents were not perfect. My mother, we're not even going to talk about. And I'm not judging her for her actions because I don't know what caused her to be this mean and bitter and cruel person that she was. Um, when I say that, it sounds like I'm judging her, but I'm not judging her. I'm just telling you that her actions were mean and cruel and often vicious. And, you know, who knows what happened to her in her childhood to cause her to do these things. Um, but, you know, we all have traumas, we all have things that happen to us, um, and we all have to deal with them. And if we don't deal with who we are and what we are, or how badly our actions have affected somebody else, if we don't deal with it here on this earth plane, you're not going to get away with it. You're going to have to deal with it sometime or another. And I think one of the scary but also intriguing parts of when we pass into the spirit world is not only do others in the spirit world see you for how you really are, um, I don't believe that there's a man with a white beard and a long flowing robe sitting on a throne. I don't think that's not my idea of God. But I do understand why people see that because they can relate to the physical. But I do believe that many people are terrified to die because they think they're going to be judged by God or that God force, and they're going to be punished by that. And I think it's so clear to me. I mean, I've been doing this so many years. It's so clear to me that the only person who is judging us when we get there is ourselves. But what happens is when we arrive at some point, when we get there, we have to, I mean, it's very clear to us because we can see all of those people we've left behind, but we can also see who we are and what our actions did to them, positive or negative. I mean, we can see the effects that we've had on other people. So we're there, and we can't hide. Not only can we not hide from others, most importantly, we cannot hide from our own selves. And we have to face who we are. We have to face the meannesses or the intolerance or that we showed, and we have to face what our actions did to others. The same as, if we were kind and gentle and loving. And I mean, I already see what my effect on my grandson has, because he just glows under me, and I can, see his aura glowing because, he feels my love, and it's precious. And the same with his mum. He knows that he is well loved. And I think as parents, I remember being pregnant with Samantha from all over the place. And I remember being very heavily pregnant with Samantha, and I was not allowed to get up. I was on bed rest for literally 9 months. But so I had a lot of time to think, and I was concerned about being a mother because the last thing I wanted to be was a mother like my mother. And I remember, sort of thinking, what is it that I can give to my child that, that is going to help them through life the most? And I came to the conclusion, and that's all those years ago, and I still feel the same way. The only thing of any real value that we can give our children is the knowledge that they are well loved. Not loving them, not saying I love you, not, actions speak louder than words, but I think it's important to not only show with your actions, but also with your words. Um, you have to give them that knowledge. You have to give them that absolute certainty that no matter what happens in life, no matter who rejects them, no matter who loves them, it doesn't matter, but they are well loved. And I'm so glad that you told me about your daddy and that he was an earth angel. I think that's wonderful. He obviously gave you the knowledge that you were well loved, and I think that's the responsibility of all parents. And unfortunately, we don't always meet those responsibilities, but I think it's important to remember it. Chris.
Michelino says, "Good morning, Rosemary.
Good morning.
A friend of mine, her name is Claudia. She went to the spirit world a few weeks ago. Can you
Okay.
please tell me if she is fine? Thank you very much and have a good day."
Okay, so Gregor is immediately on this because you have been concerned. Apparently, prior to her passing, she had a very difficult time, and it was sort of quite rough for her. So I understand why you're so concerned, but oh, but Gray tells me she's a beautiful person and her beauty shines through, and you mustn't worry about her anymore because she's fine. And I think she's already visited you. So how nice is that? Chris.
Judith says, "More often nowadays, I find myself having a past behavior pop into my mind. I speak mentally to the person who has passed involved and apologize with feeling. It makes me feel better and them smile. Is this common?"
I wish more people would do it. And good for you that you are doing it. I mean, I think, yes, it is common, but I'm going to say this. I'm not making less of what you do because I think it's important. If a person needs an apology, I think it's important to give an apology. And often, I don't understand often arguments because those people who just have to be right about everything, and you can be. You might not be sorry for the actions you take, but you can be sorry that you've upset someone. And so, if I'm in that position ever, I will always say, "Look, I'm sorry if I'm really sorry if I've hurt you, but I still think the same thing, or if I've done something that is awful. I did one thing that I remember that I regret immensely doing to my father, and when I talk about this, people say, "Yeah, but you had good cause." No, you didn't. We don't ever have a good cause to be mean or to hurt someone or to be, to sort of lash out. And I think it's not only important for us, and my dad is looking at me and listening to this, he's heard me say this before. I think it's not only important to say, I'm sorry, it's the one thing I regret with my daddy, and to this day I regret. But I think it's not only important to say the words, but I think in the actions and how we treat other people, and how we hopefully never do that awful thing again, or we treat people with more kindness or more respect. I think that's far more important than the words "I'm sorry." And when my daughter used to, when she was little, go, say, "I'm sorry, mommy," and I'd say to her, "Sorry is a 5-letter word. It does not mean a thing unless there are actions behind it." Ooh, see how horrible and tough I am with my own child. Chris.
Helen is asking, does everyone have a spirit guide? How do I get a gray eagle? I've tried to connect with my spirit guide, but haven't been too successful.
That's because you won't get a grey eagle. Okay. So, okay. Um, I've spoken on this subject so many times, and I know that people, the people want to know, and you hear of, I don't know what to call them, even psychics or people who have a little knowledge or what have you, and you hear them, they give out spirit guides like you're giving out candies. Um, so let me be clear. A spirit guide is a highly evolved spiritual entity. Now, I'm going to put it in perspective for you. So, you're a first year nursing student and you go, you're assigned a hospital where you're going to do your training. Now, does it make sense to you that the top heart surgeon in that hospital is going to be walking by your side all the time and helping you and guiding you and giving you advice that he knows you're not capable of using because you're just a first year student? In the same way, people who work full time, as I do for the spirit world, people who work for the spirit world and who do this, it's not a job. It's not what we do. It's who we are. So people who work closely with the spirit world are not always, but more likely to have a highly evolved spiritual entity, a spirit guide, than those who, just do it, just trying to gain, knowledge and spiritual knowledge and so on. But if I wish people would apply common sense to this, because then, another myth, bites the dust. We do, all of us, have our angels. We do, all of us, have our loved ones in the spirit world, and sometimes it's somebody you will know, and sometimes it's somebody from a generation or two back who, when you were born, prior to your being born, it was decided that this guy's going to be the main person in your life who's going to help and steer and guide you, and so that usually will be a family member. Occasionally it might be a spiritual teacher that you know or that you had here. When I say a spiritual teacher, different than a spirit guide, completely different. So we do not all have spirit guides in the same way that wonderfully young and naive nursing student, first year nursing student, will not have the heart surgeon walking by her side ever. And even if she becomes a fully fledged nurse or a fully fledged doctor, it's unlikely that she's going to have a mentor who is so far, above her, who's going to mentor her if she's not going to use what he says. Like, you would never get a heart surgeon as a mentor to somebody who's become a psychiatrist. What's the point? So if you can just apply a little bit of common sense to it all, I think you'll understand. We do all have our guides, we have our angels, we have our loved ones in the spirit world who are always whispering in our ear, don't go that way, go this way, turn left, don't turn left, turn right. We always are guided by our loved ones, and that should be enough for us. And the only reason I have grey eagle is because I've spent my entire life almost. I mean, I'm 150 years old. What can I tell you? So many years. Just kidding. But this is what I do. This is who I am, and I can't do it by myself. I'm just one little human being here. I don't have the information. But in order to do my job and in order to do it the best I can, I need that highly evolved spiritual entity who's going to guide and steer me and help me to learn and help me to grow. I mean, so often I'll say to him, so can you ask, and I've got this question, what is this or what is that? And he'll turn, and it's so frustrating for me. He'll turn around and he'll say to me, you figure it out. Because he knows that I have the knowledge to figure it out. He knows somewhere deep inside I've learned enough to know that I can figure out the answers to my questions. So Gregor is not just dictating my every move. We are working together in conjunction together, which is why I'm so excited we're going to be doing this this conscription program, because it's going to be Grey Eagle and I together. So, you know, those of you who join the subscription program are going to be hearing from him as well as from me in hopefully a much more profound way. Chris?
Well, you are over time.
I am.
You are.
I don't know how that happened.
Trying to see. No real questions left after that one.
Okay, well, all right. So if you want to know more about us, if you want to know more about what Greg and I do or what we're about, do check out Instagram, do check out Facebook, do check out YouTube, because we're putting stuff up on YouTube all the time. And luckily with YouTube, we can, with Instagram, we have like a minute or 2 minutes, or if I don't, what's the difference between a reel and a story? As I just told you, Samantha does all of that for me. But which I'm trying to put something up on a regular basis on Instagram for people, and obviously we're going to be doing TikTok very soon. TikTok. I know nothing about it, but we're going to be doing stuff on TikTok as well, and you know, wherever we can get. But do check us out. Check out YouTube, and if you would like to email, if you want a consultation or you want some healing from us or whatever it is that you need, you can always go send an email to Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com. And in the meantime, thank you for joining us. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel as if I've talked a lot. I'm sorry if I'm not giving you a chance to answer questions. But I do feel some of the information that we've talked about today is sort of intriguing. Got to find out what sentinels are, actually, as far as Grey is concerned. Got to find that one out. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for participating. I'd like to say thank you to Greg, particularly for his input. As I've said, we can't do it without him. I'd like to say thanks to Chris, and I'd like to say thanks to all of you for joining me. I'll see you next week. We've got other things planned. So keep checking. And in the meantime, please, everyone, have a very blessed rest of today, and have a very blessed weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.